Welcome back to Create Wealth Through Franchising Podcast and Kim Daly TV. In my studio today, another Daily Double. We have John Glazier of Hello Sugar. John, welcome back to the studio of Kim Daly TV.
Thank you so much. It is an honor, and I'm excited to be here.
When this man was on before, I said I have to have him back, and we are going to do a coaching episode. So John first came on talking about his transformational journey from actually college student into franchising, and I'm going to have him share his story a little bit for those who may not have heard the first episode, and we will put a link to that first episode in the description below. John, let's first have you repeat a little bit of your story, how you got involved with Hello Sugar and how many units you've grown in a short amount of time. And then we're going to talk about the real coaching episode I want to get to today, John, is the idea that you somehow were able to see it in your mind's eye and believe in it before you built it. A lot where this is coming from is a lot of investors say, well, I'm going to start with one. And then if that goes right, I'm going to add more. But the reality is they know they need more in order to make the kind of money they want to make. And I believe that that mentality hinders people. They lose out on opportunity because by the time they're ready to come back, the locations are sold. Comes from a different mental state than I think the one that you have. And I really want to dive into the attitude, the beliefs that you have and that you hold in order to have grown so quickly. So let's first start though with who you are and how you got involved with Hello Sugar.
It was winter of 2019. I was going to school, and Brigham, he's the founder, franchisor of Hello Sugar. He actually was my professor. Super interesting story there. He's only a couple years older than me, so we're pretty close in age. He was my professor. He was doing adjunct teaching at the university I was going to, and he was teaching entrepreneurship. I got an email one day prior to that winter semester saying, how to start a $100,000 business with $1,000. Obviously intrigued, signed up for the class. I ended up graduating in the entrepreneurship program. That semester changed everything for me. And I remember him saying in the class, if any of you are in Arizona, then hit me up and we can hang out, and it'd be great to see you guys. Well, my wife and I, for the company I was working for prior, which was actually a coaching company, which led to this conversation, they were opening an office in Phoenix that coming summer. And so I ended up going down there that summer, hanging out with him. We became great friends, and I ended up moving down to Phoenix. And fast forward a couple of years, we'd hung out a ton of times, became really good friends, and shared the same friend group. And we were having dinner in 21 in April. He just said, hey, I have this waxing concept that I've been working on here in Phoenix. I think he had 9 locations at the time. We have 1 location starting up in Flagstaff that's been open for 3 or 4 months. This is a trajectory that they're on. Would you be interested in franchising, being like the first out-of-state owner to franchise? We have one other guy that wants to do it. He's my good friend, Christian. He actually opened up in Houston. Do you want to join him? And so I was like, yeah, this would be great. Obviously, we thought about it first. I trusted him a lot. He was a great friend. He had a really positive track record. My wife and I thought about it, prayed about it, and it just ultimately felt good. So we decided to open up in Meridian, Idaho, which is where I'm now. That's in July of 2021. And we started off in a suite. So just a little 10 by 10 room inside of a Phoenix Salon Suites in Meridian. Tested it out. Shortly after opening, the owner in Houston opened up. Obviously a much bigger market. It's about 10 times the size of Boise. I had a little bit of, I don't like to use the term FOMO, but I realized that I had bigger ambitions than just having a couple in Boise. I was really fighting for another market and eventually convinced Brigham to let me go into the Denver market. And so now we have Denver, open up our first one there in March of 2022. And then we've since expanded, and we have 8 in Colorado as of last month, opened 2 new ones, and we have 2 now in Meridian. So we have 1 in Meridian, and then we just opened 1 in Boise about a month ago too. Yeah, so now we're at 10.
You followed that. You are doing really good. The long and short is the man's on a mission. He's since 2021, and at the time of this recording, it's March of 2025, and he's opened 10 franchises. That's the story that we want to dive into. This is not the usual path, and it's not even the empire building path that I've seen, where people say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and build 3 over 3 years. This man's built 10 in 4 years. That's why I wanted to have you back on, because there's something extraordinary happening, and I want to give you the credit because it's in your mindset. I know there's probably some belief in Brigham and you saw what was happening. You have to give yourself the credit for what you saw and your ability to believe in yourself to carry that out. Help the followers, help Kim Daly really understand, when you started, did you have the plan for what you have today? Is it going according to the plan? Has the plan pivoted and adapted because things took off. Start us at the beginning of this massive, growth journey.
I went to the school for entrepreneurship. I love startups. I like very much part of the tech scene before, was part of a startup that was going to IPO, and then COVID eventually hit. I love that, like, the growth side of a business is extremely exciting to me. I've never really been in a position or worked for a company that was quote unquote stable, if that exists anymore. I just love the idea of moving forward and pushing the needle. And so that's just kind of some context.
Because not every investor out there is going to resonate with this story. For those that do, for those aggressive, entrepreneurial, let's go kind of guys out there, or females out there.
So we opened up our first one in July. I mean, here's one thing. We were going to just open one. We decided to open two, learned that opening two at the same time probably wasn't the best idea. So we consolidated. So even that was another growth decision that we just made and just pivoted from. It's never sat well with me personally to have to work a job my whole life. We've tried mobile homes. We've tried developing products. We've tried different online businesses. We've tried all this stuff, all these side hustle type things. None of them have lasted we had a greeting card company, just very random stuff, and none of them had really hit. And this one, it seemed like a proof concept to me. And so I wanted to really just hone in on this and just focus on this. And as soon as we opened our first location, ads were great. We were doing really well and working out a lot of kinks, because it was a super young system at the time. But as soon as some of those kinks started to get worked out, I knew what my ultimate vision was, and I've known that for a long time. I set really aggressive goals. I was 27 at the time, and I wanted to essentially be able to retire at 30 if I wanted to, right? Just the thought, even if it was 40, whatever it was,
right.
I just wanted to be able to push myself beyond what I thought my natural limits were and just have that always at the forefront. So that's where we decided to open up more, because I knew that one or two wasn't going to get me to that point. And I just sensed that this would be an emerging franchise at some point. And so I wanted to, in a sense, grow as quickly as I could, as sustainably as I could, without driving myself too crazy, in order to get some good territory that I was really wanting.
Beginning with the go-to-market strategy for Hello Sugar, how have you been able to accomplish 10 locations in 4 years without, multi-millions of dollars? First, let's attack that.
Very simply, Hello Sugar's business model to date has been to start in a salon suite. So I mentioned earlier, a 10 by 10 room inside of a Sola Salon Studios, whatever. Build up your business there. And then once you've proven out that area from a marketing perspective, you have potentially even good staff at the time, just have proved out the demand, that you move into a storefront at that point. Storefronts are 1,200 square feet, 12 to 1,300. You could have 4 service rooms in there. And typically it's a 10-year lease, so it's a little bit riskier. Your build out's more expensive, and then you have a more expensive lease. We kind of have these incubator locations that you eventually move into storefronts. That's how we did it. I haven't had any investing or no investors on my side. I haven't taken any investment. We used HELOCs. We did have some real estate. We just kind of tried to be as smart as we could with it and just grow as sustainably as possible.
How many of your 10 locations right now are salon suites, and how many are fixed locations?
We're working on converting 2 or 3 of them in Colorado to salon suites. So right now the ratio is pretty super heavy on the suite side. It's 9 suites to 1 flagship. 2 or 3 months, it'll be 3 or 4 flagships to 6 or 7 suites.
When you go back, I'm just curious about the lending part of this. When you go back to get the loan, are you using SBA lending? Do they require you to have a track record on the other store in order, or are you getting some kind of a jumbo loan?
So essentially, SBAs for every individual location, we could get an SBA loan. We have self-funded all the suites through storefronts. We just do SBAs, and it's tied to that specific location, that physical address. We didn't apply for an SBA loan until after we had already been open for 2 years, which is one of the requirements. It's actually harder, I've found, to get approved for an SBA loan after you've been open than it is starting out fresh.
By the way, this is my disclaimer. We're not trying to get into the weeds of financing, and you have to go through, your own process, and I will introduce you to the lenders for the businesses that you're looking at, because I think this is an intricate part of being able to afford to build and scale 9 or 10 stores in a short amount of time. I think it's an important question to cover.
We had a situation when we first moved into our storefront in Idaho, where Brigham had a relationship with a banker in Phoenix. He thought it'd be extremely easy to get me approved for an SBA loan. And so I actually signed the lease to our flagship here before even contacting the lender. I just didn't know. He reached out, he was like, "You've been in business for a year and a half. Like, I don't think you're going to get approved for any type of lending for this storefront. We're going to start paying rent in 3 months from that point. So I reached out to probably 15 to 20 different banks. I looked for local banks. I remember it was all that was on my mind for about 2 weeks until I found someone that could get us approved and just give us some hope. And we ended up finding 2 or 3 banks that could work with us, but it was just so stressful and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so that's kind of just one small story that has been essentially my experience the last 4 years, just trying to figure things out. I mean, it's not like we had this big nest egg saved up and we had enough to get going, and we've just kind of tried to figure it out. It has not come without its financial stress for sure. So they need to acknowledge that.
So let's really get into that, because I think that's what the core of this conversation really is. When the candidate says to Kim Daly, well, ultimately, I want to own 3, but I'm going to start with 1. And I'm trying to help them see, like, it's not my job to talk you into anything. It's my job to talk you through it. Committing to the vision of building multiples is very different from committing to a single store. And I understand that in some cases, it's absolutely best to go one at a time. But like I said before, sometimes that hinders your ability to come back and get more. In a fast moving brand, by the time you come back, the territories around you may be sold to other people. There's no first right of refusal in franchising in 2025. That went out in like 1990s. You're not going to be able to say, hey, I'm going to get a first right of refusal. And a franchisor who gives you one, I'd say run fast. Sophisticated franchisors understand that, yes, we want fewer owners with bigger businesses. So they want you to be that empire building mentality. They also know that if you can't commit to it now, they're not going to hold the territory for you. Their job, their business is a national brand, and it's, consecutive territories sold. So it's not that they're trying to cut you out or be mean. It's business, right? And they don't know if you're actually going to come back and come through. You somehow have to figure out how to give yourself that confidence when you haven't even opened 1 store that 3 will be okay. Or in this case, 10 will be okay. So John, speak to some of that, the mentality. I would say proactively discipline your mindset to stay on the positive side of that.
I'll parse this out a little bit.
Yep.
First part of the answer is just how and why maybe bet on Hello Sugar in particular, or just in thinking about any other brand and how I felt, where I got the confidence from. I'm extremely confident in myself and my abilities. You need to tie yourself to some type of vehicle. If your ultimate goal is financial freedom or retirement or whatever it is, you need to make sure that vehicle is a good vehicle to get into, strap your seatbelt into, and just go down the freeway. And I really just had Brigham stores to go off of in Phoenix. A lot of other brands have more of an established FDD and stuff. I would attach myself to those numbers and say, okay, look, you have the top 10%. Hopefully they're transparent with their FDD. If they're not, run away from that brand. That's my opinion. Look at the top 10% of performers, the middle 50, and then the bottom 10%. Even if you just were an average franchise owner, what do those financials look like? And are you comfortable with them? Because if you are, then the odds are you're going to fall in that bucket. If you feel good with those numbers and you feel confident in yourself, and then you meet the franchisor and you feel confident in them, and you feel like the way that they evaluate areas and the demographics in those areas is solid, then why wouldn't you at a minimum fall into the mean of those financials? That's just kind of my process and thinking through, if I was looking to a new brand, where would some of my confidence be derived from? There's documents out there. They have to be transparent about this. At a minimum, look at that. And from there, you could at least make a decision to move forward.
Because I do have a question. What do you say to the candidate who's like, well, they were only proven in Phoenix? How did you have the belief that you could take it to Boise, to Denver? Because there's a lot of limiting beliefs in candidates' mindsets about it's only proven in one market. There's no guarantee that hair grows on people in Denver.
That's like, are people going to wax in Denver? Are people going to wax in Boise? My answer to that is I looked at the product. And I looked at competitors. If it's a brand new service that didn't have any competitors, the first of its kind, I would have been a little bit more apprehensive, maybe. It's a public company. All I had to do was search hair removal in my area and just across the country. And I don't know how those individual businesses are doing, but the fact that they've spread out that much must have meant that there was a high demand.
So then, John, if there's all this competition in the market, how do you feel like you can bring something in and compete?
I actually liked that there was more competition. If it's a brand that actually differentiates themselves, then it makes you more confident because it means that there's demand. If you could take that from your competitors and you feel confident entering the market, I actually think it's a very positive thing to have competitors.
I love this guy. And so when you're looking for real estate, do you do the whole McDonald's Burger King thing? Go right across the street from where the competitor is? Are you that bold?
I mean, there are some that are actually that close. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily matter matter. We actually look for shopping complexes that have, we don't want to be neighbors with them because a lot of times there's restrictions to that with the landlord. It wouldn't necessarily hold us up. So
It's so good. And listen, if you're listening to this and I'm just kind of pointing out where, look, I've been a franchise consultant for 23 years. And so I know kind of the common pitfalls or the things that trip people up. And when you're outside and you've never owned a business and you're looking in, these are some of the common things like, how do you afford to build 10 locations? What about the competition? You mean you took a brand new concept into a brand new market and you weren't worried that people weren't going to want it? We've covered all of that, and it's just awesome. I mean, I saw all of this in my first interview with John, which is why we're here today. I really want to get into the mindset of managing your fear when you have all this out, and I'm sure that money's not coming in at the level that it's going out if you have 10 stores in 4 years. How do you mentally work with your thought every day to keep yourself positive?
for me, it starts with, am I based as a person? I want to make sure that things are good at home, that I get a lot of confidence from my family. Am I physically healthy? Those are kind of my
Grounded.
basics that I do on a daily basis to just kind of make sure I'm bringing my whole self to work. From there, I do have a business coach. I talk to him every other week, and he helps me stay away from like massive pitfalls. It's not the easiest thing. One thing I've always tried to do is make sure that at a minimum, if we're growing new locations, that we're not in the red overall as a business. Those locations are negative, those locations are losing money until you get them to break even. Now that we're more established, I won't grow something if I know that we're going to be negative for the next bit. Now, when I was growing initially, obviously you have 4 locations or so in a 6-month time frame, you're going to be negative. So I just needed to make sure that I felt comfortable with the trajectory to get those to break even and profitable points. Was the reward going to outweigh the risk? I wanted more additional territories. We were on a good trajectory. And so I felt comfortable saying, okay, 3 to 4 months from now, I have this much in savings. I have this much in the bank. We have this much coming in. This is our trajectory to break even. We should be there in 3 to 4 months. Do I feel like that's actually going to happen? And if that's the case, do I have enough money set aside here this to actually continue to work out? Do I have enough money to set aside to continue to grow? Ultimately, once this is profitable, is it going to help carry the negative locations? And then it just kind of trickles down the line. So once you get that first profitable location and you just go through that, it continues to go. You need to be able to forecast that in your mind and be okay with the negative months. If you're okay with that and you acknowledge it, then it's not as scary. I'm very much look at the worst case type of guy and move forward. Even though I'm extremely optimistic about business, I have to acknowledge things, right? If this doesn't work, am I going to have to sell my house? What does this actually look like for me? Once I digest that, it makes it a lot easier to be confident moving forward. So again, I don't want to make it sound like we were out there making super, super risky moves. It was a classic story at one point where I was, $86,000 in credit card debt, had maxed out a HELOC. I was like, for 2 or 3 months, I was like looking for ways to pull out more money other places, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. We've pulled ourselves out of that. I have felt that financial pressure, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. There is a difference between that and growing controllably and just acknowledging the risks and just being super excited because you see the potential upside.
It's a stunning story. I mean, this is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because the one thing that we can't overlook is this is an emerging brand. So he's using numbers off of corporate stores in another market. And again, because I've been a consultant for 23 years, I know that where people trip. And that is the value of hearing this interview, hearing it from somebody who's done it. And I'm sure that those moments you had, John, where you were in debt and you're like looking at your wife, I'm sure there's a little bit of fear in your eyes, but there's more hope because you were leaning into the system and you knew based on the corporate stores that this could turn around and this could turn around. And the energy that you're putting out is in fact what you will always get back. And that's the tipping point. That's what I wanted to get to in this interview. The coaching moment for Kim Daly, the mindset coach, what you focus on in those moments, whether your business is 10,000 in debt or 86 in a HELOC in debt, what you focus on is what you attract back, because the universe is just a big fat mirror. Oh, John wants to fearful today? We'll give him more reasons to fearful. Or John has hope today? We'll give him more reasons to feel hope. And it's that starts to spin this thing toward the up versus the down, because it's in that tipping point moment your business will make or break. And there's a lot of people out there exploring franchising who believe that the tipping point, they can't put themselves in that spot. And then if they do, it's up to the franchisor. Franchisor has nothing to do with this. It's all the energy that the owner is bringing, and fear is a very powerful, compacting emotion. I wanted to get him to this moment. I could have this coaching moment with those of you who follow me, if you're in my pipeline right now, or if you're soon to follow me, because this is how I want to help you to think before you sign a franchise agreement. So you're not holding back. You're not saying, well, I'd love to be John, but I'm not John. John wasn't John until he was John. And sometimes it's a little messy before you can clean it up. What matters more is the attitude and the thoughts that you're bringing to the business in those tipping point moments, because it matters. It's the future of your business. And I want to go back to you hired a coach. I love that. And I'm wondering, when you were growing by 4 locations in 6 months, is that, and things probably started to spiral pretty quickly where it could have gone out of control in your thoughts, is that when you were smart enough to go look to say, I need a coach outside of my franchisor?
I was fortunate to have enough experience with the company I was working for before. So I had had a life coach up to that point. I was kind of using him as a business coach too, and he didn't really have that experience as much. Brigham had a guy that he had been working with for a while. He's very familiar with Hello Sugar. It was in the middle of it. I didn't even know where we were financially at the time, but it was definitely a big risk. I mean, it's not that he wasn't the cheapest in particular.
When you're already bleeding financially.
I kind of knew what a coach could bring, and the thought of a coach specifically for just focused on my business. And there's so much that I don't know. I would be selling myself short to think that a coach couldn't help me. Even though it was financially stressful at the time and everything that way, I realized that whatever I spent on him would come back 10x. It might not be in the next month, but it might be in the next month. There have been so many times where I've come into a coaching session so headstrong on one idea, end up leaving, either that idea being amplified or that idea being completely dissipated and moving forward with a different one because, I didn't even realize that was a path. It has saved me a lot of money, has helped our business grow. I'm so glad I've had him for the last couple of years. Even if it seems like the worst time in the world, most often that's actually the best time. I'm really glad that I have them.
And it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your sanity, right? Your mental stability. It's an investment in hope. A coach can really have a different perspective of the game and just help you overall. Is coaching something that is promoted? Hiring a coach outside of the franchisor coaching, is that a standard practice within Hello Sugar, or are you the rare exception to the franchisees in that community?
It's a mix. It depends on people's circumstances. How much support do they have? Is it they have other business partners, whatever? But overall, it is very widely promoted. It is very encouraged. We have myself and then also our chief growth officer, Jacob, there to help coach some franchisees. But that's specific to Hello Sugar. Maybe they have other businesses. And I think that that's where a business coach could come in and help look at the holistic picture behind a person and help them grow across multiple facets or just be singularly focused on one business.
And you're paying a royalty to a franchisor, John. Isn't that what you're getting is ongoing coaching? What do you say to that objection?
It's so different. With a coach, they are specifically tailored to your business and your life. Yes, the franchisor helps with that. To have the level of detail that a coach brings into your life and helps you with such granular decisions, a franchisor is not necessarily responsible for that.
I want to sit here and talk to you forever, but I know your time is very valuable and I appreciate you offering us this daily double interview today anyway. Is there anything else in closing this interview that I've left off, or anything else you want to offer in terms of the mindset of building and scaling a 10-unit operation less than 5 years?
There's these cool headlines and that sounds amazing. Grow, challenge yourself to expand beyond beyond your natural normal mindset and your natural abilities that you have for yourself right now, and push the limits, but at the same time, grow sustainably, get off social media. Don't always feel like you have to be the one that's I made $10 million in 2 years, and, grow sustainably, make decisions for yourself, but challenge yourself. And I think that franchising, I was saying this last time, franchising opens the door for normal everyday people that have normal jobs to live an extraordinary life and have financial freedom and a clear path to retirement. And that's an incredible vehicle to have access to in America and worldwide. We have great opportunity here. And I think that if we dive into it, a lot of people that you work with that could be very successful and happy.
Thank you so much. I'm going to summarize what you said. He's saying, don't play it safe and don't think small. You're truly an inspiration.
Thank you so much. Loved it.
If you're ready to get in the game, you know that I want to be your franchise consultant and your daily mindset coach. That is the point of this video and the 1,000 videos you can find on Kim Daly TV. If you're ready, please follow the link in the description below and I will reach right out to you and we'll begin having some fun and building your dream of getting to wherever you want to be and financially free. Thank you so much for watching until the end. My name is Kim Daly and I want to be your daily coach.